So, as we spoke about earlier, this session is all about champions of real estate procurement. Now, what do we mean by that? What are champions of real estate procurement? For example, yesterday we saw all those iconic projects. Isabel pointed out so many beautiful projects. Nasir pointed out so many beautiful projects. Ali, who's still here, also pointed out so many beautiful projects. It's all fine and good on picture, but how do you get the supplies and materials to make those projects happen? That is the question, and that is what this session about. We're going to hear from champions of the procurement business, and they're going to tell us what we can do to help us optimize our procurement cycle. So without any further ado from me, our first speaker today from this session is Mr. ZOLTANKALI, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of OMRAN. OMRAN, in case you don't know, is the Oman Tourism Development Company. And once again, when I asked Zoltan, what are you going to do to make this a very interesting presentation? He told me that he's going to speak about three things. One, an overview of what the climate is, the real estate climate over here in this region is. Two, what OMRAN does in particular to boost tourism, which will of course enhance real estate projects. And three, what is his perspective on procurement. So let's please give a hand to Mr. Zoltan to come on stage and give us his thoughts on procurement from OMRAN's perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. Put it up on the screen. So as I was saying, pretty much 20 years ago, I met an Italian gentleman in Budapest. We were having some drinks and had a very inspiring and exciting discussion about hotels, urban development, cities, neighborhoods, tourism. He was a consultant, a hotel consultant with KPMG. I was working in a charity organization, and ever since then, he later offered me a job. We started working together, and ever since then I never left the hotel industry. I always worked in a way or another in connection with hotels, either from development side, investment side, or asset management side, operational side. So I'm here today to talk about what we do in Oman with OMRAN. In my capacity of head of asset management as well, I think I owe an explanation what asset management is. It's a rather fresh profession, I think, in the Middle East, and I'm sure, and excuse me for all of those who know what it is. Essentially, once an asset is built and is complete and is handed over to the market and is started to be used, then people like me and my team are trying to maximize the value of that asset. It's not only in operations, there are multiple ways owners' value can be maximized in connection with that asset. And that's what we do until we take it over from the development team all the way till the end of the life of the asset or till the end of the holding period when supposedly we would sell it. Now, those kind of transactions are not very often in Middle East yet because the market is not that liquid, but nevertheless we're trying to maximize this value year on year. What I'm going to talk about today is essentially a few thoughts about the hospitality market in Middle East, just a bit of context, and then touch upon what we do in Oman and how we do it. And in that second part, I'll address some procurement considerations as well. In terms of some market fundamentals, and I don't intend to bore you with too many numbers, but just a few thoughts rather than numbers, and I'll try to lead through the numbers without going into too many details. So just have a look at the travel market globally, and I'm sure these numbers are familiar to many. Essentially, roughly 1.2 billion people travel a year around the globe. And in that context, that's the blue bars represent the amount of people travel around the world in various regions. The first column is globally. The last column is Middle East. So we can see that roughly 53 million people consume tourism in a way or another in Middle East. This was in 2015. So it's a rather small base, which is good news in our case as hospitality professionals because there's a lot of room to grow. We're pretty much similar in size to Africa and much smaller than Europe or the other continents. We're growing around 1% annually in the last year. Another thought which from travel to more macroeconomic fundamentals in GCC. Everybody knows that for pretty much 14 years, the whole region was growing quite steadily in terms of GDP growth of around 5% per year on average, every single year. In terms of inflation, a very healthy growth of inflation. Also the trade balance was consistently positive. Up until 2015, of course, with the oil price decline, everything started to go south. Now the question is, how long are we going to stay south? How long the trade balance is going to be a deficit rather than a surplus? And have we really hit rock bottom, or we were yet to go a little further down? My personal view is that I think we're not rock bottom yet, and I think by this year, pretty much every industry player has realized that the situation is serious. Is no one going to come and save or subsidize anymore? We have to start to think more efficiently. We have to start to acknowledge that there's an end to everything. And I think that this year everybody has realized that. I think the awakening has happened, and probably next year everybody's going to try to think more efficiently, even those who haven't done it yet. And then from there, hopefully 2018, we're going to witness an upswing. So we probably, in real estate terms, we're going to go towards 7 o'clock, 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock if you look at the real estate cycle. And the last numbers thought, in spite of this macroeconomic weakening, let's say, people still travel in the region. In terms of mobility, every single airport, with the exception of one, I think, have recorded positive growth in traffic. And of course, the blue bars would show you the volume of passenger movements. And I've highlighted the airports where the growth, which is the red triangle, is really above average, and we are witnessing substantial, above 10% growth in markets like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Muscat. So it's good news in terms of maybe people travel more efficiently, but definitely more people travel. And then as a last thought, from mobility, from passenger travel to narrowing down to the hotel sector in terms of hotel market performance. And this is somewhat linked with procurement as well, because as the market flourishes and presents development opportunities, there's more demand for across the supply chain. Essentially, we have a few markets which were decreasing or weakening in terms of market performance. RevPAR, for those who were not familiar, it's a combination of occupancy and hotel rate. It's the product of occupancy and hotel rate, so it's a very good measure of how hotel markets perform. And you see that in case of Dubai, Muscat, Doha, and the last one, I think it's Abu Dhabi, there was a consistent drop in the last, shall I say, 3 years, with 2016 being year to date. And question is when we're going to be able to reverse that. I think gradually, and I've added some margin figures on the right, just to show that in spite of the drop and in spite of the relatively high rates, hotel prices that are witnessed in the Middle East, or shall I say, not in spite of it, but linked to it, the profitabilities, which are the gross operating profit margins, are really very high. And I think that indicates us that with a substantial oversupply in many of these markets, for instance, Doha is witnessing a significant increase in supply. Muscat, we're actually doubling the upscale and luxury room numbers over the next 3 years. So it's a major hit in terms of oversupply. I think gradually the shift will be towards efficiency. Hotels will start to think a little bit more efficient. They'll try to do the same service at a bit lower cost. That hasn't happened before in these markets. And still the margins are there, so there's room for efficiency. And then narrowing down a bit on Muscat, essentially, as I mentioned, from an undersupply situation, which made us be one of the most expensive hotel markets in the world, we are going to gradually move to an oversupply situation where we're going to witness quite a lot of pressure on the hotel rates, and we will have to think smarter on how we run those hotels. The room inventory is going to increase in Muscat by 900 rooms in the next couple of years, and there's quite a lot of upscale and luxury hotels that will be opening, to include Crowne Plaza or W Muscat or JW Marriott. These three are all developed by OMRAN, and some other ones like Anantara is in the pipeline. Alila down in Salalah is also a new hotel product being considered. And a number of other ones like Kempinski at the Wave. These are all large, above 300 room hotels. Nevertheless, there are opportunities as well. I think we're coming from a situation of relatively modest awareness when it comes to many markets in the world. So there's quite a lot of room to improve in terms of increasing awareness of the market. And I think with this kind of healthy increase in supply, we're going to start to be more efficient and basically operate these hotels in a more economic way. Okay, about the company, really briefly, the tourism context of the country in Oman is essentially starting from the Supreme Council of Planning, which is government's body for strategic planning, and then there's the Ministry of Tourism, who's a regulator and strategy maker when it comes to the hospitality sector, and it has a major role in tourism master planning as well, defining various areas in the country which will be treated as priorities in terms of tourism development. And then OMRAN, from the bottom of the chart, essentially plays more of a master development role. We are enabling those areas, those land plots that are given to us by the government for tourism-related and urban development. So basically, we do tourism destinations as well as urban communities, and you'll see two examples in the remaining 10 minutes of my presentation. We roughly delivered so far 10 projects in the last 10 years since the company is established. We have around $500 million worth of assets under management, predominantly hotels, around 16. Most of them are hotels. There's some attractions and some restaurants as well. There's roughly around $1.2 billion worth of projects in the pipeline. We're gradually moving away from being only developers ourselves and take a more important role in the master development in the infrastructure side and enabling those land plots for investors, also because of the sheer size of these projects. And our projects have a substantial GDP contribution for the Oman economy, whether we look at the development projects through the construction and development supply chain or for the operating projects. The portfolio is very scattered. We're not only in Muscat. In fact, we're quite modest in Muscat as of today. Once the 3 new hotels open, then it's going to be Muscat heavy, but we have lots of assets around the country, and it's a massive country. It's sometimes difficult to coordinate all the activities because of the distances. And now 2 projects which are on the drawing table of OMRAN in various stages of development. One of them, which we consider one of the flagship projects and hopefully one of the important legacies of the company, is the Port ZOLTANKALI project, which is essentially the regeneration of an ex-industrial commercial port which stopped operation in 2014. and by His Majesty's directive, it's going to be converted into a tourism and leisure port. Essentially, many models to follow and to inspire from. The ones that come to mind are Cape Town or Auckland, who have these kind of vibrant, lifestyle-driven waterfront developments, very comparable to this project that we're working on. It's located in Matra, which is a historic center of the city, next to traditional souk, Matra souk. And the whole team is very excited and working on this project. Some aerial pictures just to show a feel of the location. It's tucked around the well-known landscape delimited by mountains of Muscat, and basically wherever you look, you either see mountains or you see the sea, or you see the traditional settlement of Matra. We're talking about just in excess of 100 hectares of land. And the first phase of the development, you will see it involves roughly 230,000 square meters of real estate being built. And it's a combination of hotels, retail, commercial, very little commercial, and a bit of residential as well. Some impressions on the same side. This is already a CGI of one of the concept master plans. This is more detailed in terms of the concept master plan. This is only phase one of the project, which is going to kick off next year. Some details regarding the volumes. We're talking about 6 hotels roughly that can be accommodated in phase 3. First phase, we're going to have 4 only, a 5-star hotel, a 4-star family hotel linked to a mall, and then a 3-star more city business hotel. And the second project, which is in a different part of the city, right opposite, next to the airport, is called the Madinat Irfan, and it's essentially intends to be the new downtown area of Muscat. It's a huge area, 7 million square meters, very difficult to develop on in terms of landscaping and elevations. Is not your typical Middle Eastern city flat area. There's lots of wadis, lots of rocky mountainous areas, and this is the concept master plan developed for that area. You'll see at the north, the airport, just across the road from the airport. There are many things different from this project to what you would normally know as such scale developments in the Middle East, and one of them is that it's not your typical cluster of functions and then a bit of break, and then another cluster of functions and then a bit of break, depending on the owner and its willingness to stack up various asset classes, whether hotel or office or residential. It intends to be more of a uniformly designed, a new urban fabric. It's relatively high density and lower in level. I think we're not looking for more than 7 G+7, and it resembles very much an organically grown city fabric. So it wants to have that kind of feel, and the topography helps that, because it's not straight and geometrical. And the other thing which is different is that if you look at this site today, it's not completely empty. We are just opening the Oman Convention and Exhibition Center, which is the white building on the right side, next month in October. So we are, and there's 2 hotels under construction on that site, which are opening, one of them in 2017, first part of 17, and the second, which is the JW Marriott in the early 2018. So we are putting these anchors on site for the rest of the development to capitalize on. Some numbers here as well. I won't read them out. You'll see it for yourself. There's a plan for a regional mall as well. There's a business park where we accommodate, for the time being, 3 headquarters with the possibility of expanding them. And then some look and feel, as I said, this is not your Middle Eastern new development landscape in terms of what we see around. So we're aiming for that kind of organic feel, which I think Muscat and Oman itself prides itself of being a bit more authentic when it comes to these things, and let's see we can achieve that. And this is a visual of the convention center, which the exhibition part of it is opening in October, which is the one behind the main building. And the aerial view as well. This is a 3,500 capacity convention center, and the exhibition space is roughly 20,000 square meters, columnless space divided in 5 halls. It has around 10 banqueting halls, a kitchen that can cater for up to 10,000 covers. So it's a state-of-the-art facility. And then some look and feel on Madinat Irfan as well to close with on these 2 projects. Now, one more thought on procurement, and I hope I'm not exceeding my time. Just, I think in terms of procurement, I think there's going to be an increasing awareness that procurement is part of the development process when it comes to returns. Currently, I observe that that's not always the case. Procurement is many times about processes, rules and regulations and audit and all of that, and is not seen as integral part of how are we making money on our real estate projects. The better we are at procurement, the more efficient we are, better products we get. This is all stacking up and adding to the business case. And I think gradually we're moving in that direction, and in doing that, we're reviewing our processes and we're looking at whether these rules and regulations, to what extent help that and to what extent hamper that. We see more often than not that some of the rules and procedures and processes we have, they kind of tie us up and they make it very difficult for us to drive value out of our procurement processes, and we're revisiting those. But essentially what I wanted to convey here as a message is that OMRAN, for the last 6-7 years, it was priding itself and it was pretty successful in driving in-country value, and we were very sensitive on whenever we procure, we make sure that there is a local legacy element to it, whether it's coming through partnering up with local suppliers, engineers, companies, or it has a corporate social responsibility angle where we have hotels where we buy local produce. For instance, from Jebel Akhdar, we've established a farm with a local farmer, and we're supplying a substantial amount of produce in the hotel kitchen from that farm. And people might say it's not as efficient as we would. It's not, but there is a local community element, and we believe that because of that we also get the support from the community and the awareness. In fact, some of our studies shows that every 1 rial that we spend, around 80% of that, in a way or another, it's spent locally. Maybe it doesn't end up locally, but it's definitely spent locally. And then another figure which is interesting is that after every rial we spend in this way, we generate around 2.4 rial sort of social value in the community. I think this kind of, I call it affirmative procurement. I'm not a procurement expert, but I'm using procurement every day, and I think this kind of affirmative procurement is definitely something to consider. And I think Oman can do quite well in that because there's a relatively mature local market with a lot of local players, entrepreneurs, a lot of Omani entrepreneurs, SMEs. So we have some solid grounds to work with. Just some impressions on this farm that I've mentioned about, which caters for our Alila hotel up on Jebel Akhdar. And then there's another project where 2 our hotels in Musandam, which is a northeastern tip of Oman, bordering the Hormuz Strait. We have 2 hotels there, and the local ladies have established a small company that caters for the guests in terms of gifts and handicrafts and some cultural activities as well. So I'll leave it with this. I hope I managed to share some interesting information, open for questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.